So you can understand why Spurs fans were disappointed to see this happen.
I think Brentford are idiots.
I thought the tweet was quite mundane, to be honest. I've never seen such a mundane tweet create so much traction amongst the Newcastle fans.
He's built a good relationship there. He's had a good season. I feel like there is a chance he could then sign a new deal. Welcome back to Monday Vibes, ladies and gentlemen. I am back in the room. I'm back in the UK. Had a lovely time in Italy. Thank you all for asking. I know that is what your question was going to be. Today I'm joined on a lovely Monday where the temperatures in England have dropped down to 22 degrees. We cannot be complaining. Henry Hill, how are you doing?
I'm good. I want to know, are you a convert to holidays? Because Zach Jalab does not believe in going anywhere for pleasure.
Mini retirements, doesn't approve of them.
You sound like Gary Neville.
It's true.
No. I do. What I always had was I didn't
mini retirements.
Have the places to go or so on and so forth.
What is that to gain from rest?
I really enjoyed it. It was very, very nice.
Well,
Lake Como was lovely.
Pleased
thank
for
you. And whilst I was on holiday, you just decided to randomly do a marathon. I thought you'd done with them.
I did a half marathon and it was horrible.
Not just any half, the hardest half in the UK.
According to their sales pitch, yes. it was incredible.
And you decided this on the weekend, didn't you? On a night out.
Yes. No,
good decision, mate. Well done.
It was hot. Let me tell you that it was hot. But no, it's good. I feel like the weather's made the front of my hair go into like a really frizzy dome.
Mate,
so that's a flex if I've ever heard one.
If I look like
I just look so good.
If I look like I've just come out of like a 70s hair salon and I've got some kind of perm.
Yeah, well, at least you've got the option.
Hey, what's wrong with the perm?
Dukes. You know you rock it and you know you're gorgeous. So
exactly, mate. Exactly. And talking about Diggy Critchley, you were getting called out over the weekend.
Yes, the Irish guy coming for me. I thought the tweet was quite mundane, to be honest. I've never seen such a mundane tweet create so much traction amongst the Newcastle fans. I just said I think Tonali might be a bit overpriced. That was it. I didn't even say he was a bad player.
Mate, Newcastle fans have it out for you mainly because he supports Sunderland.
And all of them were like, "Oh, big reveal! He supports Sunderland," as if I haven't said it for the last 10 years.
The argument of we used to sign Nabil Bentaleb and now we're signing Tonali. It's like, well, you're a completely different club now.
Yeah. Things have changed.
70 million euros is still 70 million euros.
Yeah,
look,
absolutely.
Hamill's left, so you need somebody else to call out. So yeah, now it's you versus the Irish guy. I'd like to see it. But look, that's enough about ourselves. We need to start talking about football and the transfer window because my gosh, it has fully opened. It has gone crazy. I'm going to talk about a move that is basically done now. In fact, by the time this video goes live, it might have been announced by the club themselves, if not definitely over the next coming days. Kai Havertz to Arsenal Football Club. £65 million is the supposed reported fee. How that is going to be dealt with, maybe it's 55 plus 10. We'll see in coming time. Jorginho posted over the weekend a photo of him and Kai Havertz with side eyes emojis at the wedding of Kepa Arrizabalaga. Congratulations to him.
Both looking very smart.
Yeah,
well.
indeed. Nice. And then Arteta as well, having just in an interview before it was announced saying, he didn't want to talk about other players at other clubs with Declan Rice, very happily spoke about Kai Havertz. In his quotes were, Havertz, well, he's talented. He's a versatile player and only 24 years old. Talent has a price. He's shown a lot already, including the Champions League. Fabrizio Romano also said as well that Havertz believes that playing for Arteta and Arsenal was the best project, not just in England, but throughout the whole of Europe. Havertz thinks Arteta's side ideals and style will only help him be a better player. Now, we've spoken a little bit about Kai Havertz over the past couple of weeks really now. I think personally, from my side of things, I think both clubs can be pretty happy here. I think, as Arteta has mentioned, he is a versatile player. It does seem like he's going to be playing in that 8 role, but he can play off of the right. He can play through the middle when he is needed, when other players maybe need a rest or he's going to try a different style of play. And I think Chelsea, realistically, can be pretty happy with getting £65 million for their player here. This is a guy who, if we're being completely honest with the amount of money that's spent on him, I think 75 million rising to 90, whether that actually did rise to 90, I'm not too sure, maybe didn't quite get as much as they expected. This is a guy that was considered one of the best wonder kids up and coming. Obviously, Chelsea, when they made his signing, kind of did it on a whim because it felt like if they didn't get him this year, everybody else would be after him the year
Real Madrid,
after.
etc.
It is sometimes a little bit surprising that he's still only 24 years old. I think of him maybe being a little bit more older because he has experienced so much football. He mentioned there him winning the Champions League, or scoring the crucial goal against Man City, and he has great experience with that. He has been a big game player for Chelsea. But if we're being realistic, he's not quite lived up to the hype, and so I think a lot of Chelsea fans will be quite happy. However, I don't know if I'm in the minority or the majority here. I still feel like there is a player in Kai Havertz. The one thing I do wonder about is if he stayed at Chelsea and say he goes to Arsenal and he's a huge success, would that have happened if he stayed at Chelsea with Mauricio Pochettino? We don't know that now and what could have been. But I feel like for £65 million, I think both clubs are pretty happy, Henry.
Yeah, absolutely. I as you said, we've spoken about him a fair bit, but I'll repeat an initial feeling I have. If Chelsea had just played him in the position where he was excelling at Bayer Leverkusen, we may have seen a completely different player. And he's rarely got to play in that role in this Chelsea side.
Is that the role? But will he be playing in that role at Arsenal?
I think he'll be there more often than not. I do think that he's going to be used down the middle at times to give Jesus a break, certainly. But yes, he's there to provide also a break for Bukayo Saka on the right-hand side when necessary. And I get what he's saying about the Arsenal project, although it's probably not... It's definitely in the top 5 most exciting projects to join. I'm not going to say it's bigger than City's project. It's just not. But I do think that they are, obviously, Arteta's building something. They're only getting better and better. And I can see why he'd be interested in joining a place with a bit more stability, a manager who is proving himself time and time again. I do think he's going to have an opportunity to be the player that he wants to be more often than at Chelsea, where every week he was being relied on as the spearhead of an attack, which isn't really week in, week out his best position. But as I said, he was involved in a lot of chances. He's in the right positions. I do think that maybe in a more positive environment, which Arsenal will provide, I think we could start to see a better player, because he does seem like a guy perhaps a little bit fragile, emotionally fragile, and I just think he maybe needs a bit more loving arm around him. That's been difficult to have at Chelsea when there's been so much turnover and change. And I mean, essentially, this is why I think that he's accepted a move.
Yeah, he's had many ups and downs at Chelsea, that's for sure. He's had the highs of winning the Champions League and kind of battling for the title for maybe 4 months with Thomas Tuchel, and then also the lows of finishing where Chelsea finished this season and kind of being Chelsea's best outlet in front of goal, and that's not really the biggest compliment to be honest.
It sounds like he hasn't put up much of a fight. It sounds like this has come up and he's gone, absolutely.
I think if I'm Kai Havertz, I was about to ask you this question that you do. If I'm Kai Havertz, I would bite your hand off on this opportunity. I actually think Kai's probably I think Havertz is probably a little bit lucky to be in this position.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to him saying this is one of the most exciting projects. I think it's one of the most exciting projects that wanted him. I don't think there were that much other concrete interest. There was talk about Real Madrid that never really materialised. But I think the fact that he can play in multiple positions really does change the nature of this deal. Look, if he was just a striker, I'd be pretty reluctant to spend that money on him. If he was just a right winger, but the fact he can play as a 10, as an 8, as a striker, he's a useful player to have. Having said that, I think this deal will look worse if they don't get Declan Rice over the line. It's the sort of thing that Arsenal fans will be like, why don't we just spend an extra 30, 20 million pounds on Rice, and instead we've got Havertz. And I feel like Rice is the more essential player to get through the door than Havertz. Having said that, Havertz is a player that if you watch week in, week out, eye test wise, he never really pops because he never really delivers in terms of goals, assists in the way you'd want him to. But if you like your statistics, his aerial win rate is very good. The way he holds up the ball is pretty strong. He always manages a numerous amount of successful carries, things like that. So metrics, there are some good things about him, but what you really want in terms of goals and assists, he struggled to deliver at Chelsea so far. So I think Chelsea will be happy with the sale. I think Arsenal will be reasonably happy to get him through the door right now, but it could be a deal that sets him off on the back foot if they don't get Rice through the door. I think the pressure does rise on him quite a lot if he is their major summer signing.
Well, those two as well. If they do get Rice, they do get Havertz. I feel like that is a lot of the money for the summer spent. Obviously, we'll be moving on to another target that they have in defence as well later on. If they get those three in, I think Arsenal fans will be pretty happy with their window. I mean, Arsenal fans at home, please let me know what you think of the Kai Havertz deal alone. Are you happy with it? Are you disappointed with it? I mean, it very much feels like online that a lot of fans are very much trusting the process for Arteta.
I'll tell you who I'd be annoyed about. If I was Eddie Nketiah, Reece Nelson, I was Folarin Balogun.
I was thinking Vieira.
if I was Vieira, there's loads of players that look at this and go, hold on a second, I thought this is what...
That's what I'm supposed to be doing, providing backup.
Look, we were also sitting here 3 months ago going...
They don't have the depth.
They don't have the depth. Half the reason Arsenal dropped off, they don't have the depth of quality either. So I guess we can't have our cake and eat it. But let's move on then to another Chelsea midfielder who, instead of a transfer looked like it's going to be happening, it looked like it might be off at the moment. Mason Mount, again, another guy we've spoken about a bunch, so we won't go into too much depth about it. However, if you haven't heard, I'm sure you have, but unless you live under a rock, it looks like his move to Manchester United could be off now. Supposedly Manchester United put a £55 million bid in and Chelsea rejected it, wanting more, I think around 65 million pounds for their midfielder who has 1 year left on his contract. United have supposedly not walked away from the deal, but left that same offer on the table if Chelsea are willing to change their mind, which I think is a fair thing for them to do. They don't want to go higher than £55 million. Now, the decision was made with Ten Hag. Apparently, United don't want to overpay for, again, a midfielder who has 1 year left on his contract. United very much want Mason Mount and are believe that they will get him, especially with his desire to leave Chelsea as well and join Manchester United. A few things came out over the weekend as well. Supposedly, Mason Mount had a deal agreed with Chelsea, a new deal agreed before the World Cup. Then once he came back after the World Cup, things changed. Supposedly, the only deal he's been offered since is a 1 year extension for £200,000 a week. Now, I don't know the full extent to everything else and why he hasn't been given more years or so on and so forth. He was supposedly happy with 200k, but the years were the difficulty there, which is understandable. Also, Bayern Munich have come out. Apparently, Thomas Tuchel is keen on Mason Mount. There's that element of things that have happened. Whether Bayern will spend that amount of money on a guy with 1 year left in his contract doesn't feel like that will happen either. But Chelsea might be willing to accept less if he's not going to a rival in the Premier League. So, guys, very quickly, Mason Mount, what do you think is going to happen here?
Well, I would be quite frustrated if I was him. You look at what Mudryk got offered. Look what Nicholas Jackson's just signed. 8-year deals, 8-year plus deals. So for him to be offered 1 year, if that is the case, that's pretty disrespectful, considering especially that Reece James signed a longer extension as well. Was it 4 or 5 years as well?
For 250.
So I can totally understand why Mason Mount would be frustrated. At the same time, he's not in the strongest bargaining position, or at least not as strong as he was last summer, because he had such a difficult season. For Man United's perspective, I think it's really intelligent just to take your foot off the gas for a second, because Chelsea do need to sell a number of players before the 1st of July for FFP reasons. And this is an extremely good offer from Man United, I think, for a player with 1 year left on his deal. And if you're haggling over £7-8 million for Chelsea, it just seems a little bit petty at this stage. And I think Man United, as good as Mount would be for them, I think he would be a good signing. The position they're planning on playing him in, he actually hasn't played that much of in the last few years, so I don't think it's even a disaster for them if they don't get him through the door. It should be decided in the next 10 days or so, and if he isn't through the door, I think they can focus on someone like Moses Caicedo or, a more defensively minded midfielder. So I think from Man United's perspective, this is quite a good decision just to take their foot off the gas, and I'd actually be quite surprised if Chelsea didn't accept this at some stage.
There's a little bit of me, and I don't know whether I'm being the optimist here and optimistic, because obviously I adore the guy. It's that, okay, say Man United walk away from the deal and Chelsea have a strong season. I don't know, they finish top five, say. Mason Mount is being used by Mauricio Pochettino quite a lot. He's built a good relationship there. He's had a good season. I feel like there is a chance he could then sign a new deal, where
there's a chance.
Kind of everything is sorted out, happy with the years, happy with the wages. Do you not think that could happen?
No, I think his decision's been made. I agree with most things you said that. For starters, I think he'd be an amazing signing. I don't necessarily think all of Chelsea's outgoings have to be done by a certain date. They've done so well so far to shift the amount of deadwood that they have. I think this could rumble on.
There was speculation, though, that the Saudi sales don't count towards FFP for this year, which I can't remember the exact details of. Should have had that information down. Maybe I'll look that up as you're talking.
Well, regardless, this seems like it could be one that rumbles on the whole summer. Let's not forget the window's long, targets come and go, deals collapse are made, and if it gets down to the wire and it looks like Mason Mount still really wants to leave, then I still think a deal could be found. I agree, like Manchester United shouldn't just be mucked around by Chelsea. Certainly some guys that have been proven that they're not that smart in the transfer window, in all honesty. So I think that Manchester United have the right to sort of take the upper ground on this one. But I still think that this deal will get done. And I think he would be a brilliant addition to that midfield.
It would be a classic Manchester United summer, though, if they haggle all this time and then by the end of the transfer window end up paying the exact amount of money that that Chelsea want.
Yeah. Very Ed Woodward that would be.
Did we find out anything about FFP?
I mean, you type in FFP Saudi Arabia Chelsea, there's just loads of articles being like Chelsea have cheated. So
okay.
I'll look that up in the information up another time.
On. Okay, but look, because of this and then pulling out, supposedly Manchester United have looked into another deal for Adrien Rabiot. Obviously, the midfielder has supposedly had talks with the club, or at least his representatives have had talks with the club, and the 28-year-old's contract expires at the end of this month as well, so they can pick him up on a free. Juventus are also talking to him to try and get him to sign a 1-year deal at the very least, and they can make some money from him if they could sell him as well. He's also very close to joining Manchester United last summer before things didn't quite work out in terms of personal terms. Adrien Rabiot to Manchester United for free. Obviously, wages will probably be pretty high. Feels like a pretty good deal, because I was surprised with Rabiot in the World Cup. I'm not going to sit here and say I watched a lot of his Juventus campaign. I didn't. But in the World Cup, I was pleasantly surprised. I think him and Griezmann for France had really strong campaigns. Obviously, they made it to the final as well, so they did pretty well on that front. But he's definitely, I feel like he's turned a corner in recent seasons, or at least in recent years. And at 28 years old, is still a good age profile to come into this Manchester United squad, which is being developed with a lot of young talent, but also can do with some experience as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a lot of experience, as you say, at two big clubs in PSG and Juventus. And last year, people will say, oh, he's playing for a new contract or he's playing for a move. But he was their second top scorer, I believe, and was really, I think he was one of the top scoring midfielders in Serie A. And was, picking up really dangerous positions, looked really motivated, looked sharp, looked fit. Was probably his best form since his middle of his time at PSG, probably. Because his first couple of years at Juventus were a little bit flat, in a side that was struggling, to be honest. But yeah, on a free transfer, there's very little risk with this. The only thing that always comes up with Rabiot is the fact can be quite moody. His mother's a little bit of a troublemaker.
Well, it does seem like he's maturing as a player. I mean, yeah, you said about those first few years at Juventus, he was often played on the left wing, wasn't he, during that time? So it really looks like he's 28 now. He's becoming more of a senior member of the squads that he's involved in. It looks like he's maturing and understanding his own value as a player. Because as you said, he's had an amazing World Cup for France. He's been one of the pivotal players for Juventus in what this year has become a slightly younger team with sort of younger players coming through. So yeah, I think if we're talking about Manchester United and depth in that midfield, it looks, they're trying to shift Fred, for example. I still think McTominay has a role in that squad. But if we're looking at options on the bench that could come in, I think, or even start when Eriksen, etc. is unavailable, or even challenge Eriksen for a place. Rabiot would be an absolutely brilliant addition at this moment in time. He's in the peak form of his career, and the only concern is his wages would be large.
They would be high, and obviously they supposedly had this Ronaldo rule where they weren't going to go and give people over £200,000 a week. But then Rashford looks like he might be signing a £300,000 a week deal.
I get that with Rashford though. I mean, Rashford he's consistently been their best forming attacker in recent years. He's committed. He's from the club through and through. I can get why, as an icon of the project, I'd rather give him that money than Ronaldo. That's for sure. Yeah.
I just find it funny how they make the rule and then within 6 months it can be broken. But that's Manchester United. Okay, we're going to move on to another transfer that was announced as well. We'll touch upon it. Ilkay Gundogan to Barcelona was confirmed. A 2-year plus 1 deal. He's going to be obviously playing in that midfield for Xavi. My only question is, if you're Frankie de Jong or Pedri or Gavi, do you have to be questioning a little bit about where my minute's going to go from this? Now, there is obviously the chance that he could play in Busquets' position, or they drop one of the others into Busquets' position, but they're all much more further forward players than Sergio Busquets was.
I listen, first and foremost, signing Gundogan is always good.
He's definitely.
He's a stunning player, big game player. His form in the last few months has been unbelievable. For City, captain's qualities, great signing. For Barcelona, with all these players that you've already mentioned, the fact that they're trying to get their wage bill down. I know they're Jordi Alba, Busquets, etc. A few people have left. The fact he's not going to be going there on a charitable basis, is he? He's going to be commanding big wages. And he's also going to be taking minutes. I mean, I've seen a lot of the Barca fans say, oh, yeah, he's going to give Gavi and Pedri a rest, etc. Which, don't get me wrong, they probably do. Pedri's played way too much football for someone his age. And yeah, that is right. But Gundogan's not going there just to be a rotation option with the younger players. He's going there to be a big player because that's what he is. He's won so many titles the last few years, just coming off the back of a treble. He has more reason to start than most of the players in that squad. So yeah, I think for any club, obviously it's great to get him through the door. I just don't really understand this for Barcelona. Why are they using their finite resources on a guy when there's so many other holes in their squad to fill? And you're right, someone like Kessie, Frankie de Jong. I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen. I think there maybe could be one big departure from that Barcelona midfield before the summer's out. I wouldn't be shocked if the whole de Jong situation kicks off again.
I mean, that was a big rumours that happened last year that very almost came to fruition as well. Could we see De Jong to United?
I mean, maybe. I don't really want to have that all over again. I'm pretty bored of it. But yeah, I mean, he's probably the most natural 6 out of those 3. But at the same time, there are some question marks over his defensive positioning. It's not a natural game for him. I think he's better in those, in one of those 3-8 roles driving forward. I mean, one of his best years at Barcelona was under Ronald Koeman, being this sort of penalty box, getting into the penalty box, late runs, etc. I thought he was excellent. The good thing about Gundogan is that in the latter half of last year, Xavi kind of moved to a box midfield with Gavi on the left but coming inside. And Gundogan would be quite good in a number of those box roles, to be honest, either as the 2 at the back or 2 further forward. But at the same time, in those bigger Champions League games that are going to decide where Barcelona are viewed in the next few years, because they've got a very good chance of winning La Liga again next year. They've got a very good chance of winning the Copa del Rey, but it's really the Champions League that's kind of, Barcelona want to establish themselves as a threat to Real Madrid in terms of, who's got the most titles, etc. over the next few years. It's really going to be the Champions League that decides that, and they probably do need a more defensively minded midfielder. So I think it's a strange use of resources, but at the same time, they signed a player on a free with so much experience at the top level. And for Gundogan as well, he's achieved everything you can as a footballer at Man City. He's given everything to that shirt. He did brilliantly at Dortmund before that, Nuremberg where he made his name before that as well. So for Gundogan to wrap up his career at Barcelona, it's a pretty beautiful end to an amazing CV.
It really is. And fair play to him. He did a very good Players Tribune article as well, so make sure you check that out too. We're going to go back to Chelsea because it looks like they brought somebody in. Nicholas Jackson for €35 million. Now that's just over his €33 million release clause, so Chelsea can do it in instalments rather than a big sum of money up front. Now last season he scored 12 goals in La Liga. He's got a big rise to fame for the 21-year-old. I don't think he's going to be the starting striker for Chelsea.
Don't put that on Twitter, though. Chelsea fans get angry.
But definitely one for the future. One for the future. Chelsea are going into next season at the moment with Broja, who's coming back from a long-term injury up front, and that's really it. It looks like Lukaku is off. I mean, Nkunku could feasibly play in that position, but we've already spent a couple of years playing a player in a striking position where he doesn't want to actually be playing. And how did that go for us? The guy looks interesting, looks really raw, and with someone like Mauricio Pochettino, who's had a great history of developing strikers, Harry Kane, really, and obviously improving the likes of Mbappe and, at PSG. It'll be really, really interesting. I mean, I've seen people already doing what they do with is he the next Didier Drogba, so on and so forth. I don't actually think he's quite the player Didier Drogba was. Very, very different. Oh. But with also Fofana going out on loan, it kind of feels like he's just somebody that will be there to pick up some minutes whilst Chelsea look to try and sign a more eligible striker.
Yeah, I would suggest so. I mean, I put that on Twitter the other day and Chelsea fans got quite angry with me, but I don't think he is ready to lead the line for a club that wants to get back into the top 4 next year. Look, he did play very well at Villarreal, but it was mainly from March to the end of the season, and he's only ever started 16 games in a top 5 league. I think it's a big ask to say, look, you're going to start 30 league games for Chelsea, we expect you to score 15 to 20 league goals, and hopefully we get into the top 4. I just don't see that happening.
He's still a €37 million striker, and unbelievably, I think that Chelsea can't spend forever. I mean, you've already bought in Nkunku, Malo Gusto. Looks like you're going for a big price central midfielder. So I'm not sure where the other striking option is going to come from this summer in terms of your budget-wise.
I just think Broja might be ahead of him in terms of the ranking.
I mean, if Pochettino sits down and looks at them both in pre-season, Broja's not exactly coming back with stars in his eyes. He's not blown the competition away last season, has he? Jackson, his numbers are actually super impressive. His hold-up play with his back to the defence is remarkable. I think he'd be brilliant at linking players in, but hopefully, I suppose, forming a partnership with Nkunku or bringing in the other strikers around him, Sterling, etc. He looks very exciting, and he scored 12 goals, and he had a sort of the best goal-to-shot ratio in La Liga last season. That shows that he's pretty clinical when given opportunities. He's still a 37 million euro striker, as I said, so I think this is really one to watch. This isn't like Fofana, where I'm sort of going, what on earth is happening here? I wouldn't be shocked if by Christmas time we start to see this guy starting
leading the
games.
line.
Yeah, it's leading the line, because at this moment in time, I think Chelsea have to take a little bit of a gamble with an option, because they've thrown a lot of money at players that hasn't worked. There's no reason to suggest Nicholas Jackson couldn't be a success. As we said, we've not seen much of him, but he's not played much first-team football. So, I mean, I'm excited by it. I actually think this is one of the more smarter signings that Chelsea have made, because the risk isn't massive, and I think he's got huge potential. He looks very good.
Well, hopefully he comes good at some stage in the next 8 years as well. He's certainly got time on his hands with his contract. If he's a flop, it's going to be very difficult to shift him.
Yeah, I mean, he's very young. We'll see. And I'm excited for the future for him. Who knows? Maybe he will be leaving the line by Christmas, and I'll eat my words. We'll also be talking as well. Azpilicueta to Inter Milan. Looks like that's happening.
That's cool.
Fair play. I think Chelsea, he's got 1 year left on his contract. I think basically he's asking to go for free. That looks like it might happen. What a legend. He's very much an icon for Chelsea. Won everything there is to win. 12 years, I think he's now been at the club.
Yeah.
He's not as well. I've met him a few times. Fantastic guy. Lovely. And behind the scenes, someone that's like... I just think it's really nice sometimes when you see people that obviously are huge megastars to the clubs, legends, but also like...
Down to
earth. So nice to everybody at Cobham. Brilliant to, like, say, the kitchen staff, the ball boys, whatever it might be. He's fantastic.
Do you see he just did his Harvard Business School
really?
He did a summer project, and the intake of that year was so interesting. It was like Eni Aluko was there. It was such like a random selection of pretty cool sports stars that have all gone to do this. I'm not quite sure what it is, but a little summer course. And it looked like everyone really enjoyed his company, and it looked like... I think what a great class to enroll in. I've definitely been there.
Henry's signing up. I think that I would say to Inter Milan fans, I wouldn't have too high hopes on what sort of he's going to do on the pitch over the next couple of years.
Definitely.
I would say over the last 18 months, it has been a really steep decline. I don't want to be too mean to a club legend and a player that deserves massive respect. I think he's one of the best value signings in Premier League history.
12 million, I think it was.
I think it was even less. I think it was about 7.
Wow.
Or at least what I saw yesterday. I think that was maybe pre-add-on, so maybe you're right. But yeah, played all across the back line, won every trophy at Chelsea.
Literally every trophy.
He's been brilliant. But he has not been quite the same player, understandably. Age catches up with us all.
Indeed. Now, also talking about another new Inter Milan player, a guy that was kind of rumoured to be going possibly anywhere across Europe, Marcus Thuram to Inter Milan. Henry,
great signing.
How do we feel about this signing? Because it's mega. This is. I think this is really, really good, considering that Romelu Lukaku, who we might touch upon afterwards, doesn't look like he's going to be joining Inter Milan again.
I mean, it makes... Obviously, the heartstrings would say go to Lukaku, because he's been a big success at Inter Milan. But at the end of the day, he's 30 years old, massive wages, and it would still require a fee to get him out of Chelsea. You've managed to beat PSG, who are very interested in Marcus Thuram. Apparently Leipzig wanted him, and AC Milan as well. You've managed to beat all these guys to get him through the door. There's going to be a signing on bonus. But €6 million a year, that's pretty reasonable for a player of his quality. Was he 24 years old?
Something like that, 24, 25.
24, 25. Not the most prolific goal scorer, I should say. I think 44 goals in about 130 games for Mönchengladbach, 16 last year. But I think in a big side like Inter Milan, he could go to the next level, because Mönchengladbach weren't great a lot under Daniel Farke, certainly, and he still managed to etch out goals in that side. So, yeah, I think this is a really good signing. He's big, he can hold up play, he can link players in. They've just lost Edin Dzeko to Fenerbahce, and we were saying, should they sell Joaquin Correa the other day? Well, now they've got another quality guy through the door, and I can just see Marcus Thuram and Lautaro Martinez almost picking up from that Lukaku relationship that Martinez had, and just pressing on, because he's got a great ceiling to Thuram, and I think that Inter Milan is the perfect next step for him. And yeah, I think if Inter play their cards right this summer, and it's not going to be easy, but if they play their cards right, I think La Liga is there for the taking for them. Serie A is there for
La Liga would be an incredible achievement.
that would be remarkable.
They're coming for La Liga too.
Well, haven't they also just got De Vries to sign a year extension as well? And he was obviously rumoured at times to be moving off.
I mean, just because it links in, if they get Frattesi in from Sassuolo, who is one of the most exciting young midfielders in Serie A, if they can move Brozovic on to Saudi Arabia for 26 million euros, that'd be pretty good at this point given his age, and the fact that last season we really saw Brozovic drop off. The Inter president even said himself, he's not been quite the player that we're used to Brozovic being. If they can get good money for him and then bring in a young Italian replacement in his place, then that's remarkable. I mean, Inter still have little bits to do to kind of bulk out that squad, as you said, as Pilaqueta in defence. It's still a heavily aged back line that they're going into next season with. Bastoni signed a new deal as well. That's massive. Yeah, I think if Inter play their cards right, then they can have a very exciting squad next season. And I think Marcus Thuram is such a statement piece to go into that forward line.
Yeah, it's very impressive.
La Liga, watch out.
But from Inter Milan to AC Milan, you mentioned Lukaku. They now seem like the front runners to be getting his signature. Chelsea have supposedly come to a settlement with Lukaku that 40 million euros will do it to get his services, which I think is, considering Chelsea paid 100 million, a fair enough valuation where both sides would probably be happy. Lukaku last season, definitely not a good campaign by his standards. The past 2 years, I think he'd be quite disappointed with now as well. And so AC Milan are supposedly the front runners for that. Doogie, how do you feel about that? And also, AC Milan, £15 million for Ruben Loftus-Cheek.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I think that's a great sale from Chelsea. At the same time, you are maybe looking a little thin in midfield now. There needs to be quite a few new players coming in for Chelsea, so there's a little bit of uncertainty there. As for Lukaku, I'd be quite disappointed in him if he swapped. He hasn't directly swapped into Milan for Milan, but that is a very controversial move. And given the way that Inter were willing to throw him a bone last year, get him back on loan, and yes, he did have a very difficult campaign, but he finished it very well up until the Champions League final, and that was pretty horrific, as was his World Cup campaign as well. But there doesn't seem like there's that many other top clubs that are looking at him. So I think he's quite short on options. As Henry says, he's getting to an age now where no one probably wants to buy him permanently on those wages that Chelsea were willing to offer him. And you've got to just slightly question his decision-making at times in the last couple of years. That interview at Chelsea, that was a really big opportunity.
Turning point, that wasn't it?
Really big turning point. He actually started that campaign really quite well, was injured and didn't initially go straight back into the side. Did that interview with Sky Italia, and it was just an absolute bombshell that he never really recovered from, and Tuchel never really trusted him again. Could he have had another chance under Pochettino? Maybe. I'd potentially rather have Lukaku on the books to help out these young strikers that you've got next year. Looking at who else you're potentially looking to bring in around the squad, you still need to sort out potentially goalkeeper, central midfielders. I think you need at least 2. So having Lukaku, I don't think would be the worst option for Chelsea. But for Milan, Giroud didn't have a great year last year, isn't going to get any better really at this stage. They've lost Ibrahimovic. So Lukaku wouldn't be the worst option, but I just think from his perspective, can you really take yourself that seriously if you've swapped Inter to Milan? He's also played for Chelsea and Man United. There doesn't feel like there's a lot of loyalty in his career path.
It's also a weird use of resources by Milan to go and spend that much money on a player like him. It's
very different from their strategy over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I'll be worried maybe about his fitness issues. If anything, over the last 2 years has shown us that his fitness issues are a cause for concern. We're going to head over to Man City now, because they are basically very close to announcing Kovacic for, I think it is 25 to 30 million
something like that,
pounds, which is we'll talk about. And also, Gvardiol is being rumoured. 100 million. 100 million for arguably one of for the next decade or so, best centre-backs in the world, or it looks like he could be. It feels like a very, very strong transfer move here. A move of intent. Obviously, they are looking to get rid of Laporte. Dukes, how do you feel about this? Both of them, both Croatian players.
I think Kovacic is a very useful player to have around the squad.
Do you feel like that is the Gundogan replacement?
Probably
because
not.
They are different.
Yeah, I think he's just a good player to have. They don't know the future of Bernardo Silva quite yet. If Mahrez leaves as well, then Foden will probably have to play on the right, which means he probably won't be used in midfield very much. So I think Kovacic is a good player to have around the squad. Look, probably didn't have his best year at Chelsea last year in a team that was struggling, but I think he's Premier League proven. I think on his day he is one of the most. I actually think he's one of the most underrated midfielders in the Premier League. I think if he could be more effective in the final third, then people would talk about him a lot, in a higher esteem. But at the same time, is he a natural Gundogan replacement? They're quite different players, but at the same time, they do have that ball retention. They do have that dribbling through tight spaces. I quite like the Kovacic move. As for Gvardiol, I think it's a sensational signing because he can play, if they want to persist with that system, and he needs to cover at sort of left back, left-sided centre back as well. He could do that really effectively. He's got brilliant passing range. I think he'd be one of they're probably outstanding centre-back passer if Stones is going to play in that midfield role. And he's an absolute tank at his age already. He looks so physically developed. And I think he will have no issue adapting to the Premier League. It's a lot of money, but at the same time, City have shown that they are willing to give players time that initially struggle. Phillips looks like he's going to stay now, Grealish, Cancelo, so there's no massive rush. And Gvardiol looks like, as you say, probably the best emerging young centre-back in the world right now.
He really announced himself at the World Cup, didn't he? The World Cup, I think, he was already, I think if you were a big football fan, you would have heard of him. But for the casual fan, at the World Cup, I think, was the stage where he went, look at me.
And look, I mean, he got slightly embarrassed by Lionel Messi in that 10 seconds, but
who hasn't?
Exactly. I mean, you can do a compilation of Messi destroying Marquinhos, Sergio Ramos, Rio Ferdinand. Yeah. Everyone's had a difficult day against Messi.
Yeah, I don't think that is the changing point. Yeah, what signing that would be for Man City. We're going to go back to North London now and talk about Arsenal, but I mentioned him early on, Jurrien Timber. Now, his contract at Ajax ends in 2025, so this could be the year to make the most money for him. Supposedly £44 million was the price tag. Now, talks between Arsenal and Ajax have been happening for the last week or so. £30 million was rejected, which Arsenal put in place. This is a guy that can play right back for Arsenal, centre-back if needed. Again, another up-and-coming defender, young defender who looks really, really exciting. Weirdly enough, we actually spoke about him on Sunday Vibes, Henry, me and you, and I proposed him to go to Liverpool, actually. But Arsenal seems like it could be the destination for him. 5-year contract already agreed, personal terms done between Arsenal and Timber. Headers, another savvy bit of business if Arsenal get this across. But do you think there is a price tag where you don't want to go beyond?
Well, I think, 55 million euros?
So 44 million was the price tag that Ajax have set.
I think that's brilliant. If you consider the amount of money that certain clubs have paid Ajax in the last few years, I think this is really, really good value from a very exciting defender. I mean, it's another body in the defence for Arsenal.
Do you think start?
There's going to be some serious competition in that back line.
Because obviously they play Ben White at right back, Saliba, Gabriel as the two centre backs.
I'd be worried if I was Ben White. I'd feel
really?
like I'd be a little bit worried if I was Ben White at moments. Although they do love him at Arsenal.
He had a really good season. Really good season.
Saliba,
no chance.
He's not taking Saliba's spot.
No chance. But then he's going to play left centre back.
If they play a back three, then I think there's definitely guaranteed minutes for him there. But there's going to be some serious competition in that defence. Kivior, he came. Let's not forget, he came in January. He's been growing in confidence. Apparently, the Arsenal fans say he's been pretty tidy when he's had minutes too. I think he scored for Poland recently as well in a big game. So yeah, let's not forget about him. There are just so many bodies in there. But I do think that for that price tag to capture Timber, especially when there are other teams that do need centre halves, and
Man United were linked, Liverpool linked.
I'm amazed that no one else is going in for him at that price tag.
Well, considering again, we mentioned it earlier, it's about quality of depth now and improving to that, which can not just make you have a good season, but make you have several fantastic seasons for several years. Timber is a much bigger improvement than Rob Holding, which is what at times kind of cost them last campaign when they got into that run-in against Man City. And if they do have an injury to Gabriel, Saliba, Ben White, then you aren't playing Cedric at right back. You're able to play someone of massive quality. And you can understand why for Timber the project is super exciting. Okay, that gets the tick from Football Daily, that's for sure. We're going to quickly talk about some Saudi Arabia business. I'm going to just name off some names and we can talk about them very quickly. Bobby Firmino looks like he's heading there, Digi. This is a guy where the rumours about Real Madrid, I was really interested. Obviously, he's going to get paid decently. be not necessarily the starter, but have a good role in that squad. Now Saudi Arabia are coming in for him. I think that transfer looks like it might be very close to happening as well. You can understand, right? When the money for someone in his 30s comes to the end of his career, you can understand why he'd go there. But Real Madrid just felt like it was the football move, per se.
Well, yeah, and they still need him as well. I mean, they've only really got Joselu as their 9 next year. Benzema's left, Mariano Diaz has left, so Bobby Firmino probably would start at Real Madrid when he was fit. I know his minutes would probably have to be managed, but yeah, I think if Real Madrid's on the table, if Saudi Arabia's on the table, obviously I'd like him to go to Real Madrid. You know, that's a lifelong goal for most Brazilian footballers, to play for Real Madrid or Barcelona. And then as for the rest that are going to Saudi Arabia, Brozovic might be time as well. You know, had a slight dip last year, as Henry said. It looks like they're moving beyond him now. They're playing Calhanoglu in that role, and he was really, really good in it last year. As for the other ones, Koulibaly, yeah, great sale from Chelsea's perspective. Can't believe that. Yeah, it does feel like a disappointing one. I'm annoyed that he's left Chelsea so soon, but at the same time, Chelsea being offered that amount of money for a player on absolutely enormous wages, who actually had loads of time left on his contract, it's an absolute get-out-of-jail-free card
also means for
Chelsea.
Like Colwill, Badia Shield now.
Just less competition around there, yeah. And then Demarai Gray being linked to Al Hilal as well. I thought there'd be a Premier League move potentially for Demarai Gray after,
He's been alright at Everton.
He's been okay at Everton. I don't know whether
paid like 3 million for him, wasn't it, or something like that, or 1.5 million for him, I think.
He's one of their few really sellable assets.
Yeah, sure. And also, Demarai Gray it's slightly different from someone like Ruben Neves moving to Saudi Arabia in his prime, where you felt like there would be another top move for him in Europe. Demarai Gray, is he going to get a top 8 Premier League move? Is he going to get to a Champions League club, a Europa League club in his career? Potentially not. So Saudi Arabia offering that sort of money, it's very difficult to turn down.
Yeah, very, very interesting. I'm sure we'll be talking about Saudi Arabia transfers all summer and for years to come. By the way,
there'll be a section on every show.
Soccer Saudi, that's what I wanted to call it.
Soccer Saudi, that's what we call it.
That's what I want to call it.
Okay, we'll call it Soccer Saudi. That is going to be the recurring segment in Monday Vibes and Football Daily. Bring it on. Let's also touch upon, we spoke a lot about Chelsea and Arsenal. Let's touch upon Spurs, because they have made a move, looks like it's very, again, close to being done, for Vicario, the goalkeeper from Empoli in Syria, youngster or younger for a goalkeeper's side. Obviously, they were linked to David Raya for 40 million quid. Didn't happen in the end. I mean, it's tough. I think David Raya is someone that you kind of guarantee having a strong goalkeeper for 5 years who can play it out with his feet, a very good, very different to Hugo Lloris, and is Premier League proven. Whereas Vicario, whilst the fee is cheaper, I think 20 million euros or up to 20 million euros, isn't as proven in the Premier League, is what I was going to say.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And we've seen before where keepers who have been strong in one division don't quite adapt to a different division, and like players in general. So how do we think, basically how I'm looking at it in my side is the 20 million or 25 million euro difference worth it between Vicario and David Raya, Henry?
I think for maybe someone like Tottenham, who really do need to invest in other areas, I think it is quite a smart decision. If you listen to Serie A fans, this has been one of the best keepers in Serie A for 2 years in a row now. He was remarkable last season, 74% save rate, and Empoli aren't the best side going. Let's bear in mind he's helped them to their best league position in 7 years, and the season before that he made more saves than any keeper in Serie A. If you look at his save rate, it's up the likes of Szczesny, Mere of Napoli, Provedel of Lazio. We're talking about the big boys in goal in Serie A, so he's no slouch. And I know what you're saying about being good in one league, not quite translating over to another. It's still a keeper. They're still got there's fundamental principles about being a keeper. It's not
save the ball.
Yeah, exactly. And that is what he's really good at. By all accounts, he's young, 26 years old. I know it's not a signing that gets you off your seats, because let's face it, the casual fan is not sort of tuning in to what Empoli are doing on a week-in-week basis.
So you can understand why Spurs fans were disappointed to see this happen.
I think Brentford are idiots. I think Brentford had the opportunity. Will Raya get a move? It sounds like Onana and Magnon is ahead of him in the pecking order for other sides who are looking for a keeper. I'm amazed that Brentford are trying to be this sort of clever club, when really they had an opportunity to sell a keeper. I think they could have reached some kind of agreement with Spurs. The player wants to leave. They've already signed a replacement. Let's not bear in mind. Flecken, who was one of Bundesliga's best keepers last season. So it's kind of a bit weird bringing him in. In case that he's not going to get minutes, because I think they've already got Strakosha.
They've still got Strakosha
as well on the books, who was a starting keeper in Serie A. only 2 seasons ago. So yeah, I think I'm slightly baffled by what Brentford are trying to do here, being smart about this one. But yeah, I think for considering Spurs have so much to do with the rest of their squad, getting in a keeper like Vicario, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Let's face it. But it is still 20 million euros. I think is pretty good value. He was in the Italian national squad last season when England were playing Italy in Naples. So yeah, he's clearly valued by the Italian national team. He's excellent numbers in Serie A last 2 seasons. I think this is a great signing.
It's going to be very, very interesting, that's for sure. My only worry, say he has a couple of shaky games, very quickly Spurs fans will start going, this is typical Spurs, why don't we go spend the extra amount of money to go and get this goalkeeper in Raya? But then again, I also like your point about Brentford. It wouldn't surprise me, if nobody comes in from Brentford suddenly do start dropping their price tag on David Raya before the end of the season, considering he's only got 1 year left on his deal. We're going to go to Europe now and touch upon a few transfers as well. Lucas Hernandez to PSG came out over the past week or so. Now, supposedly, he's actually agreed terms with PSG. He's got 1 year left remaining on his deal with Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich spent a lot of money on this guy, obviously a few years back.
Club record.
A huge fee. Do you think this is someone that Thomas Tuchel is willing to let go of, Digi?
Yeah, it feels like that. I think they're going to use this money and get Kim Min-jae over the line. The annoying thing with Luka Hernandez is when he's been fit for Bayern, he's actually been pretty good, but he's missed over 60 games with injury in 4 years, so well over a season's worth of games. That's really disappointing. But at the same time, for PSG, you're signing a player who's a World Cup winner with France, obviously French.
Yeah.
They're trying to increase the amount of French connection in that squad. And he can also cover at left back if Nuno Mensch is injured, which occasionally happens with young players, or they need a more defensively minded fullback, because having Hakimi and Nuno Mensch is all well and good in Liga, but often in the Champions League you probably can't have two attacking fullbacks really. So Luka Hernandez, I think, could come in handy in the Champions League. So actually, I don't think it's a bad move for PSG if they can keep him fit, and I don't think it's a bad move for Bayern Munich either, because they're getting a lot of money and replacing him with a centre-back who's more likely to start more games next year.
Now, obviously, I've been out of the loop for the last week or so, and so I don't know if this rumour has actually happened. I feel like Kimpembe may be off.
Yeah.
Marquinhos, Skriniar, now Hernandez, if he does join. I feel like if you're Kimpembe...
Bitshiabu as well. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of centre-backs on their books. I think Kimpembe probably should be sold at some stage if you could get good money for him. I mean, it feels like he was
rumoured with Chelsea last season.
Yeah, and I think he's been linked with Spurs in the past as well. I'm not his biggest fan. I think he's potentially a bit of a liability. I think he's a bit of a hothead, and particularly in the biggest games in the Champions League, he's been kind of key to PSG really losing their way. So if you could get good money for him, wouldn't be against it.
It would be funny if they're going for a Parisian new look side and then they sell the one academy star.
That is true. That's very PSG logic, though.
But let's face it, Ramos is going to be gone in 12 months.
He's already gone.
Is he already gone?
Yeah.
Well, Ramos is gone. So yeah, I agree with you. I would probably sell Kimpembe, but it doesn't really make sense within their kind of new forte.
New strategy.
Yeah, okay. Well, another player that looks like he's on a move to Europe, and a guy that we spoke a bit about last season, spoke about him recently, Edson Alvarez.
Well, he's already in Europe, but yeah, moving in Europe.
Yeah, exactly, moving in Europe. A short plane trip.
Netherlands is not in Europe.
Very close to joining Chelsea last summer. Again, that was someone who was going to be playing in that DM role to try and it was going to be about releasing Enzo, that was spoken about, and also how to replace Kante, so on and so forth. But now to Borussia Dortmund. Obviously, they lost to Hood as well. He's gone to Brighton this window. Henry, is that kind of it's not necessarily a like-for-like replacement. I feel like Alvarez is much more defensive in that mould. But look, Dortmund last season were very close to the Bundesliga title on the last day. They need signings. They need quality signings as well. Do we feel like this is one of them?
That's the thing. I really like the fact they've gone and got a guy who is pretty established so far in Europe. He can do quite a lot, can't he? He's I mean, for Mexico, certainly, he's more of like a defensive monster in the air, ball winner, really sets the tempo for that team. And it looks like he's progressed further and further forward during his time at Ajax. He's now in like top 10% of midfielders for shots, passes attempted, passes completed. Really, really big all-round player, and I do like this. I still think they need another attacking-orientated midfielder through the door. I don't think you can rely on Marco Reus for output year in, year out at the moment, and Jude Bellingham did have that ability to drive forward and break into the line. So I do think that they need to go out and make another midfield signing, but 25 years old, guy sort of entering his prime. This is the kind of signing that Borussia Dortmund needs to make, and it's good to see them beat someone like West Ham to the signing. I mean, they should be beating players.
All is well in European football when West Ham are being beaten by Dortmund to a signing.
Exactly. And I think this is an ambitious move for Alvarez. It's a nice step up from Ajax. Yeah, like you said, his transfer saga where he tried to get a move at the end of the window last year and he just didn't turn up to training. They were like, no, you're not going anywhere. I quite underrated that. But it's his time has come to leave. He's really reliable and I think he adds a real kind of steel to the Dortmund midfield, which they need because, as we've seen, they can be fragile, and I think he brings a real kind of fighter's mentality.
Well, if you're him as well, right, and you go to somewhere like Borussia Dortmund, you know very quickly people are looking at Dortmund for young, exciting players, and okay, he might not be the age of 21, 22, like some of them, but still 25, 26 next summer. He could quite easily, if he has a solid campaign in the Champions League again, take another step up very, very quickly, and Dortmund get a huge fee for him.
I know what you're saying, but I don't think Dortmund every signing they make has to be someone.
I'm more thinking from Alvarez's side of things rather than Dortmund's side of things.
I do agree. But at this age, I do feel like this could be a move. He could be there for quite a while.
Yeah.
And I hope for Dortmund's sake he is, because every player they bring in they can't just have a 3-year window and hope that the stars align within their squad. Like, you have to have guys in through the door who are going to be the spine of that team for a long time. And I think Dortmund's thinking big money on a big midfielder. That this is the guy who's going to be there for a while.
I like it. Good luck to him. Another guy, a bit younger, but going to Germany this time. He is going from Liverpool to Germany. Fabio Carvalho. Now, supposedly he was quite disappointed with the amount of minutes he got last season. Obviously, Fulham fan over here, was fantastic for you in the Championship. He is a really exciting player. I think he's really, really fun on the ball. A very kind of can play off the wing, but also as a 10 as well. Be interesting actually to see how they play him at Borussia Dortmund. Now, he only cost Liverpool £5 million in the summer. It's a season-long loan. There was actually rumours as well that he was looking for a permanent move. Liverpool said that's not happening whatsoever. It's going to RB Leipzig, playing in Germany is fantastic for a guy who's very, very young. And so overall, it just looks like a good chance all round, right?
Yeah, I think for sure. I mean, he was a low-risk investment from Liverpool. Started actually the season really well, I seem to remember, but actually in the calendar year 2023, I think he's only played about 65 minutes, which is it's not great, to be honest. Leipzig do need bodies all over the park. I mean, they've lost Nkunku, they've lost Lima's left. They've brought in Christoph Baumgartner over the weekend, actually, which I really like, from Hoffenheim. They've got Benjamin Sesko coming in as well to add even more depth to that forward line as well.
Still there.
So Boslai's still there. So, I mean, he also is the sort of player that could play in a number of different roles for them if they, go down the 4-2-2-2 route. He could play on one of the wide roles. He could also play as a 10. He played a little bit in midfield last year for Liverpool. It felt like when Liverpool played a midfield with him, Fabinho and Harvey Elliott, they were a little too lightweight. Yeah. Lacked a bit of physicality. But I think in Germany you can potentially get away with that a little bit more. But at the same time, I'd be surprised. He's not really a midfielder, no. I think he's a right winger / number 10, ideally.
I will say the pressure is on him. It's not like he's going to one of the contenders for the Bundesliga title. There's no guarantee that this is going to work out. We saw Hudson-Odoi really struggle at Bayer Leverkusen last season. Leipzig aren't there to be like a charity loan move for him, just to give him minutes. If anything, I think this might be almost too big of a club for him to do. I feel like he should have gone to a smaller club where he was guaranteed to get minutes and PS stuff. Even go to Fulham. I mean, I'm not even joking. Yeah, he would have. Yeah. We're looking at what? Lucas Ocampos. I'd have taken back for Carvalho.
Well, you lost Solomon.
We lost Solomon as well. I just think that Carvalho, if it starts going wrong in Leipzig, they've got so much riding on their season. They need to make Champions League football every season to sort of maintain their position. So he's got a lot to do to prove himself in a different league, in a foreign language. I'll be interested to see how. This is an interesting one to follow because I'm not sure it's the right decision personally.
Fair. Especially with Baumgartner coming in for, I think it's about 25 million euros. He's Premier League proven, Bundesliga proven. Dani Olmo's extended his deal. He'll be a key player there next year. So Boslai's still on the books, as you say. So competition will be really fierce.
Well, he only played 74 minutes last season in 2023. So you can understand, I think, why he's frustrated. He's a guy that had a fantastic campaign in the Championship. believes that he should be playing more than just the Premier League under 21 division, and so good luck to him. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how that works out. And finally, guys, I want to touch upon England and their Euros or under 21 Euro campaign. They've just qualified out of the groups, won 2 out of 2 games so far. They beat Czech Republic and Israel, and Angel Gomez said something really, really interesting. He said there's no better time to be a young English player after Gareth Southgate watched their game against Israel in Georgia. Now, some of the guys that are in there are really, really exciting. You can understand why he said that. Mark Gehi was one of the guys that is obviously shown how he's taken the step up as well to go and play for the senior team, and obviously playing very regularly. He's the captain of Crystal Palace. Really, really impressive. And the squad also features Moore Gibbs-White, Emil Smith-Rowe, Levi Colwill, Noni Madueke, Curtis Jones, Kai Gordon, Skip Braithwaite, Jacob Ramsey. Is he right? Is there, can any of these guys have a really good chance of breaking into the senior side next season?
Maybe. It's really competitive. I think Southgate actually doesn't get enough credit for the way he's blooded a lot of young attacking talent into the England team. I think he's probably been quite reluctant to shift Harry Maguire, but then at the same time, Harry Maguire's never really let him down. But look at the rise of Saka and how integral he's been to England ever since the get-go, really. There was not really that much reluctance. Bellingham took a little bit longer, wasn't so used at the Euros, but then look how well that came off at the World Cup. Felt like that was the perfect time. Yeah, exactly. So I think there's a decent chance that if someone like Morgan Gibbs-White has another excellent year next year, I feel like he probably feels the most likely out of that crop. I know Anthony Gordon's having a good tournament as well, but he's actually been pretty disappointing since joining Newcastle so far. Smith-Rowe had a really difficult time getting into the Arsenal team. Henry actually, very good suggestion at the weekend, suggested him to go to Brentford on Sunday Vibes.
That would be good fun.
So you can see, I mean, I don't think Southgate would rule it out. He obviously managed England under 21s as well in the past, so he respects the pathway. And for Angel Gomez to say that is pretty promising.
Well, we saw Levi Cole actually train with the senior side as well during the qualifiers, and then obviously go and join up with the youth side. Wouldn't shock me if he has a strong season with Chelsea. If he suddenly got a call up, Noni Madueke, another one. If Chelsea had a strong season, could be there.
Absolutely. You've seen Eze get minutes recently, brilliant player. I mean, we still see Conor Gallagher get regular minutes for England. If I was some of these younger guys looking at that going, if I have a good season, there's no reason to suggest that they couldn't be involved in the conversation for...
There's always a bolter as well.
Yeah, exactly. There's always room for a little wild card in that England squad. So yeah, I just... Jacob Ramsey, if he has an excellent breakout, another excellent season with Aston Villa, there's certainly in the striker department, there's at least one space behind
this time next year, we'll be sat here talking about the Euros that will be happening, and also just before that, the months leading up to it, some of the players, some of these guys that could be in that squad. So it will be very, very interesting.
Just a final word on the England team. They're playing brilliantly. Lee Carsley, big step up on the
Adi Boothroyd
before him. They should be winning. They were saying, they should be winning this tournament. They should be looking at this and going, we can do this. There's no reason. I think at this point, England have to stop dreaming of winning and actually believe that they can go out and do it. Because if you look at the other squads, Spain's is very exciting, but some of the other teams are dropping points. Germany need to beat England to even get out of the
France's is a joke, to be fair.
France's is a joke.
Their midfield was Kakare, Kefren Thuram and Kwadio Kone, and I was like, oh my days.
I agree with you. It was obviously going to be
They'll be saying that about us, mate. They'll be saying that about us.
I think
They'll be saying that about us. Well, there we have it, guys. I'm going to be very, very excited for the future of England. As I said, we'll be talking about them for the next coming months, years, let's be honest, forever. For sure. That'll be happening on Football Daily. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of Monday Vibes. I'm sure as well more breaking transfers will be happening. We'll be covering it right here throughout this week, so make sure you watch that by subscribing to Football Daily. And if you've enjoyed this video, then smash that like button, and why not leave a comment down below to let us know what you thought of some of these transfers. And we'll see you guys very, very soon. Bye.